Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Justice Talks. My name's Amy Barish. I'm the executive director of Her Justice. And at Her Justice, we stand with women living in poverty in New York City by addressing their high-stakes civil legal needs like family and immigration issues. Immigration is a key practice area for us. Over a third of the 4,000 women we help every year are working to stabilize their immigration status and get access to work authorization in the process. And all of our immigration clients have experienced partner violence. The majority of them are women of color. And while it's hard to look away from recent headlines that focus understandably on riots at the federal Capitol building, the second impeachment of our president, the inauguration of our new president, climbing COVID numbers, we can't forget the ongoing crisis for immigrant women in New York City. Today in particular is a really special day, landing as it does between the recognition of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King and the recognition tomorrow of the inauguration of our new president. And we believe that there's no better time to have a substantive discussion about ensuring justice for immigrant women. So that's why I'm thrilled today to be speaking with the 67th Attorney General for the state of New York, Letitia James. With decades of work experience, she's an attorney and public servant with a long record of accomplishments. She's the first woman of color to hold statewide office in New York and the first woman to be elected Attorney General. Welcome, Madam Attorney General, and thank you for making the time to speak with us today. You're a very busy woman.
Thank you, Amy, and hello to all of your viewers. Good morning, and it's great to be here.
So I'd like to start with a kind of broad question about the role of the Attorney General. I'm a lawyer, but sometimes the jurisdiction of the Attorney General is a little bit opaque, even to me as an attorney. So our tagline at Her Justice is shift the power, because we believe by shifting the power of lawyers to our clients, we can put them on more of an equal playing field. And you've made a career of using the law to make sure that people are not taken advantage of. And in your powerful inaugural address as Attorney General, you made clear your determination to do the same thing as the people's lawyer. So could you describe for us your goal, your vision of the role of the Attorney General?
So, as the Attorney General, my primary responsibility is to protect the rights of New Yorkers and to protect them against harm and to stand up to ensure that their rights are not trampled upon by anyone or any entity. I am the chief law enforcement officer for the state of New York. I represent the executive. I defend the laws of the state of New York. I defend all state agencies. We have a number of bureaus. They include, consumer rights all the way to antitrust, a wide range of jurisdiction. Our jurisdiction, for the most part, is civil in nature. We do have some limited criminal jurisdiction. I tend not to trespass on the rights of the 62 district attorneys all across the state of New York, but I work in collaboration with them as well as with our state police. And it is my role, distinctive role, in this capacity is to protect the rights of vulnerable and marginalized individuals as the state attorney general. I oftentimes get that question: what does a state attorney general do? And there is my constitutional responsibilities, but I also again focus a lot on ensuring that we engage in more proactive types of litigation, and that we are on the ground again representing those individuals who are oftentimes invisible and ignored. And that's really important to me as an individual and as someone who has used the law both as a sword and as a shield all throughout my career.
And you speak about being proactive. I mean, one of the things that I think has been really remarkable during your tenure so far is that you've taken a slightly different approach than I think many of your predecessors and really worked in coalition with other attorneys general very often. I wonder if that was something you went into the office anticipating, or if that was a strategy that you developed given the federal government under which you were operating.
I believe in collaboration. As a city council member, I worked very closely with my other 50 colleagues in the city council. As a public advocate, I still work very closely with the city council, and I work with other elected officials across the state of New York. As the Attorney General, again, we focused on issues such as the environment, protecting our water, our air, and making sure that we've got clean energy instead of dirty air, dirty water, and dirty energy. It was important that I stand up for individuals who were seeking a license as part of the green light law, where a number of law enforcement individuals and individuals in positions of power in upstate New York decided to criticize me and challenge the law, and we defended it. And each and every time we have been successful. It was important that I stand up for the census. So again, joining with my colleagues across the country and defending this right that everyone be counted because everyone matters, and making sure that the citizenship question was excluded. It was important that I keep ICE out of the courts because I believe in the administration of justice and the chilling effect that ICE had on individuals who were simply going into our courts to seek some justice and to serve as witnesses or to get orders of protection. It was important that I stand with my colleagues again against the scourge of opioids, which unfortunately has resulted in the death of countless number of New Yorkers in this country, in New York and across this country. It was important that I stand with my colleagues and join with them as we sued Juul, those companies that engage in these e-cigarettes. They have taken a page out of big tobacco. And I'm joining with my colleagues on other issues. It's important that, again, we engage in these deliberative and collaborative efforts. And it has been helpful, particularly at a time when we have addressed the regressive policies of this administration, whether it be on the environment, their attacks and their racial animus against immigrants, whether it's against women. That was really critically important to me, standing up and defending the rights not only of women in New York, but all across this country, but particularly in the South. It was important that we stand up for consumer rights and that we protect against mortgage foreclosures, and the fact that this administration, the Trump administration, has hired a number of lobbyists to serve in key positions, and their positions were inconsistent with the mission of certain agencies, and education on student loans. So all of these and more at a time when we were, swatting back and defending the rights of New Yorkers against this the regressive policies of this administration. It was important that I also work in collaboration with other states, particularly progressive states. And that was really part of a Democratic Attorney General Association known as DAGA. And there were times also that I worked with NAG, the National Association of Attorney Generals, which is bipartisan. But for the most part, it has been DAGA. And we have been, I must admit, I don't want to brag, but attorney generals have been the backbone of our democracy. We have stood up time and time again against this administration. We have won over 86% of our cases. And I'm proud to say that New York and California, we were the bookends. We led the way in most of the cases. And it's because of our, progressive policies, and because Attorney General Becerra and I thought alike on our values and on why we ran for Attorney General, and our role in this, and our role and our vision for the constituents that we serve. And it was an honor and a privilege, and I congratulate him on his appointment.
Well, and we thank you for that. For us, again, we're representing this diversity of people. All of our clients are women. Many of them are foreign born. So a lot of the people you talk about who need protection are also our clients. So we thank you for taking that leadership.
Yeah.
We wanted to talk a little bit about immigration today. To go back to one of the issues you raised, the ICE in the courts issue.
Yeah.
In May of last year, you led a coalition of attorneys general to stop warrantless federal civil arrests in and around courthouses. And we want to thank you for that. We also at Her Justice supported that effort and lobbied with the New York State court system and for the state legislation. So as you know, in December, the Protect Our Courts Act passed in New York State. And I wonder why this issue in particular, this warrantless arresting of non-citizens in and around courthouses, was so important to you, and how you think this new law might impact the way immigrants use and even think about our courts.
So, I joined with the District Attorney of Brooklyn, Eric Gonzalez, who also joined with me again in protecting the rights of individuals. And, in regards to your last question, I don't think our office would have been as effective as it had been without collaboration. And given the limited resources of those states, which are rich in immigrants, I don't think we would have been effective. And in this particular case, ICE in the courts, as I spoke to, well, let me just go back. The reason why I decided to run for the office of Attorney General, as the worst secret in New York was, I was preparing to run for mayor. And then this opportunity became available. And I was trying to decide, what should I do? Should I run for Attorney General, or should I just focus on running for mayor and focus on, local politics? It was a young woman who approached me in a coffee shop. Um, She's a young woman who apparently just knew me from the neighborhood and approached me and said, "Are you Tish James?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "My husband is being deported and I need some help." It was her limited English. She spoke through a limited English and she cried. And as she spoke to me, she cried. And through her tears, she told me about the what her husband was experiencing and the impact on her family. After I gave her some legal advice and referred her to an attorney, I decided to run for Attorney General. We all know that there's an increase in ICE arrests. There was an increase in ICE arrests. And for me, it was about protecting our neighbors, protecting our country, protecting our values, protecting who we are. For me, it was about protecting vulnerable individuals and individuals who came to this country for opportunity and for freedom, and particularly standing up for dreamers who came to this country through no fault of their own, seeking education and economic opportunities. I'll always remember that woman, and I'll always remember when we were successful in winning that case and basically booting ICE from the courts so that individuals can have justice, because freedom and equality is really about having access to justice, and that should be applied to all individuals, regardless of their immigration status.
Well, that's really powerful. Thank you for sharing that story. So it really was part of this immigration issue was central to your deciding to run for Attorney General. You mentioned, as you talked about, another issue, immigration issue central to you is the Dreamers. So that's another great success you've had in December of last year. You scored a huge victory for hundreds of thousands of Dreamers across the nation who are eligible for this Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA as it's known. And they were otherwise at risk of deportation. Can you explain what the result of that lawsuit means for folks eligible for DACA? And a little bit more about why protecting those Dreamers in particular. I think the Dreamers often get talked about as a group apart, and they have very special qualities, of course, but as I'm sure you know, and we certainly experience in our client population, many families have mixed immigration statuses, if you will, within their families, right? And they may include a Dreamer as well as other folks. So I wonder if you can talk a little bit about why protecting those Dreamers in particular was so important to you and what you think the impact of that ruling will be.
There are 28,000 Dreamers in New York. Um, and as I think about all of the major tech companies in this country, they were all founded by immigrants. Immigrants contribute so much to the innovation and creativity into our local economy. And so it's important that individuals understand, as JFK once said, that this is a country of immigrants and that they add so much to our country. And we've got to fight back against these myths that they're taking jobs away from Black people, that they're taking that they are that they take more than they give to our country as a whole. It is really critically important that we stand up for Dreamers. And it's really critically important that we provide access to our courts so that we protect individuals who are victims of domestic violence and individuals who are survivors of criminal offenses, and that they're not, and that, ICE had a chilling effect on the administration of justice. And that's why it was important that I stand with my good friend and my colleague, District Attorney Eric Gonzalez. But it's also important to know that, here we are, we celebrated Dr. King's birthday yesterday. The dream is still alive, and it runs through not only my veins, but in the veins of all immigrants who come to this country seeking opportunity. And we've got to make sure that that dream stays alive.
Absolutely. Well, as you know, idealistic lawyers, and I think I can count us both in that camp. One of the things we saw for our clients with the presence of ICE around the courthouses is, as you said, it had this horrible chilling effect, so that clients were just, they would see the ICE van parked in front of the courthouse and they'd be literally afraid to go into the building, even though their status may have been secure, even though they weren't expecting to be picked up themselves. That's
Right.
just such an intimidating presence. And to your point, these were clients who were seeking custody, who were seeking orders of protection.
Right.
They need to have access to those resources. You mentioned that you partnered with DA Gonzalez on a lot of these efforts. I wonder if you could just speak for a minute. We talk a lot about our clients and how this was a chilling effect for them. What is the impact for prosecutors on having that kind of presence in courthouses?
Well, a lot of the witnesses that involves the prosecution of certain criminal offenses and involves dreamers, immigrants. When individuals are victims of crime, the prosecutors don't question their immigration status. And it was so critically important that when I spoke to DA Gonzalez, he would tell me that a number of dreamers and immigrants were afraid to come to court because ICE was there. And it's important to understand that this administration, the Trump administration, talked about these bad hombres. Most of these offenses were relatively minor. A lot of these offenses should have been civil in nature. Most of these cases were not violent at all, and they were hauled off into detention centers. They were separated from their family and their children. And cases were often dismissed because there were no witnesses. And women would come to court to get orders of protection, women who were victims of domestic violence, and they too were afraid. And this had a huge impact on our economy. This had a huge impact on the administration of justice. It instilled fear and intimidation into the hearts and minds of countless number of immigrants. And we need to make sure that the values of our government, of this country, the values of inclusion, of freedom, of compassion, that they matter. And that's why it was important that we bring that lawsuit. And I'm really, really proud of the fact that we won.
Yeah.
We,
No, and I'm very grateful too, because if there's any place that needs to be inclusive, it's our courthouses. And so, nothing more frustrating than speaking with clients who are understandably afraid to access their fundamental rights, because so many poor folks, to get basic rights like custody or orders of protection, they have to go through the courthouse building to get those. So they're afraid to go there.
and
That's a
also the
huge barrier.
courthouses also provide services for them as well. For individuals who unfortunately are under resourced, they suffer from food insecurity. They need other types of assistance, and there's a number of not-for-profits that are in our courthouses that provide them with information. And so to cut them off from that, to me, is inconsistent with who we are as a country.
Absolutely. I wanted to mention another huge, headline. How many huge headlines can we have at the same time? I hate to see. We've found out.
Yeah.
But with the COVID pandemic, you were named to be one of the co-chairs of the state's New York Vaccine Equity Task Force.
Yeah.
And we, of course, at Her Justice have also seen the COVID pandemic, wreak havoc on all of us. We're Zooming, for one example, to wreak havoc on our staff, but more importantly on our clients and our immigrant clients, from loss of jobs, lack of access to federal benefits that others might be eligible for, an inability to quarantine given their living situations, given the informal economy in which they work. So I wonder why you, as a lawyer, not a public health professional, wanted to serve to lead this task force, and what do you hope the task force will accomplish? What has it accomplished so far?
Because during these last 11 months, 10 months, I've had to attend too many virtual funerals. COVID-19 has had a disproportionate impact on communities of color, individuals who serve us each and every day, individuals who are essential workers, individuals whose names we do not know, but nonetheless sacrifice so much to keep this city and this country running. And it was important that for me, in speaking to the governor of the state of New York, that he know that everyone should have access to the vaccination, that we have vaccination sites and testing sites, that there be an equitable distribution of the resources in the state of New York, because Black and brown people have really been affected economically and otherwise. And so it was important, and then and also that we confront we confront the experimental history, medical experimentation, historical medical experimentation that this country has gone through, and still continues to go through, um, and that we let individuals know about the individuals who have been part of the trials, um, individuals who have pre-existing conditions, um, that we inform them, that we talk honestly about race, the intersection of race and medicine, and the history of this country. That we talk about the question that I hear over and over again is, most vaccines take a longer period of time, Tish. This took, a relatively short period of time. What's going on? Um, Questions such as that. And again, it was important um, that senior citizens and transit workers and grocery workers and bodega workers and individuals on the front line have access to this vaccine. That to me was really critically important. And The governor got it, he understood it. I just urged him that I wanted to be a part of this task force. And he appointed me as part of this task force. It's important that we take action, um, and protect the rights of individuals and protect the health of individuals who have been impacted by COVID-19. It's had its implications on so many areas: housing, jobs, etc. And it's clear that it continues to be a serious economic um, crisis, um, and affecting the lives of countless number of New Yorkers. And so, and when we get back, you know, when we return to our offices, and we can't return back to normal. Um, we've got to ensure that we re-engineer in the economy, that we think outside the box, um, that we perhaps take into account all that we've experienced in these last 10 months, um, and that we really ensure that people who have been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19, that they are included in all of those discussions.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, I think a lot of us hope that if at least through all of this, we should learn something,
Right.
because we've had to go through this together. Our lead immigration attorney estimated that about 80% of our immigration clients are home health aides. So you can only imagine, not only are they not eligible for federal benefits, not only are they exposing themselves to the virus all the time, but they absolutely need access to that vaccine to keep themselves and their families safe. I was going to ask you, what do you see? You mentioned some of the barriers that come about, the historic problems we've had with medical experimentation based on race, the concern people might have based on race and or class. Are there any other barriers that you identify as you try to move forward to make sure people have equal and rapid access to the vaccine?
It's in education and access are really critically important, and also that the vaccination be free. There are some administrative costs, and it's important that government absorb those costs and that they not pass them on to consumers. In addition to that, that undocumented immigrants have access to this vaccination. That is so critically important. That members of the trans community, members of the LGBT community have access to this vaccination. That is so critically important. It's all about equal access under the law for me, and also equal access to healthcare. And if we are going to ensure that this vaccine is safe and effective, it's important that we get a buy-in from all those communities that have been disproportionately affected. In order for this vaccine to be effective, 75 to 85% of our population has to be vaccinated. And in some cases, we have to be vaccinated not once, but twice. There are other trials going on now. Johnson and Johnson is experimenting with a vaccine where you only have to be vaccinated once. Um, that should be approved in coming weeks. But for this, at this point in time, it's really about, it's only Pfizer and Moderna where you have to get vaccinated twice. And we're hoping that after tomorrow, after 12 o'clock tomorrow, the product will be shipped out, that the President of the United States will invoke the Defense Act, that we can have perhaps the National Guard involved, that there can be more coordination with state and federal government, that we can do this more in a more professional manner, but most importantly, that all communities have access to this vaccination. That is so critically important. And that individuals who are unemployed, who have lost their insurance, that they have access to it as well. We need to make sure that everyone has access to it, and that we not have long, long, long lines as well. We need to think outside of the box. Non-traditional spaces need to be vaccination sites. And I'm going to make sure that that happens.
Great, thank you. And you referenced tomorrow at 12. It's an exciting time for female attorneys general of color. It's an exciting time for the entire country. And I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about what your priorities and your office's priorities are going forward, especially after tomorrow at 12.
Well, we have been working with the Biden transition team, again, reversing all of the regressive regulations, litigations, and rules with respect to this administration. And I'm sure you know that on day one, President Biden plans to implement, again, some policies, and he's going to be introducing a bill on comprehensive immigration on day one. So I'm really happy about that. He's going to, again, the reverse or repeal the Muslim ban. I'm really happy about that on day one, right after the inauguration. I'm really excited about that. And the list goes on and on about what he's going to do on day one. Uh, and so we're going to work with the Biden administration to make sure we reverse all of these regulations, cases, and laws and rules. And then we're going to focus obviously on our courts. We do know we've got a backlog in eviction cases, and I'm really concerned about going forward how many individuals might lose their homes. There's a number of individuals who are facing foreclosure. And so we've got to find a solution to address this wave of evictions in the state of New York. We also have to focus on these what I call bottom feeders, or who are taking advantage of individuals who are isolated, who are taking advantage of immigrants, who are taking advantage of senior citizens and those who are socially isolated. We've got to not make sure that release these individuals who will prey upon the vulnerable populations at a time when individuals are seeking resources. We're going to be working again with the governor and as well as the mayor of the city of New York in regards to their budgets. The budgets cannot be balanced on the backs of low-income people and people of color and immigrants, and in the state and in the city. And so I will be issuing comment letters and statements on issues that I disagree with. We also will be keeping our eye on Washington. Even though we have a Democratic government, we still have to keep our eye on Washington, D.C. And then we'll be again looking at affirmative litigation and focusing on housing, focusing on NYCHA, focusing on Wall Street, focusing on antitrust laws. As you know, I filed a lawsuit against Facebook. I was part of attorney generals as we filed a lawsuit against Google. It's important again that we not continue to have these monopolies. They continue to dominate these monopolies, and it affects small businesses in our economy. And they take advantage of our data. They monetize our data, and they change the rules of the road. And if there's any competitors, any small competitors, what they do is they engage in these predatory acquisitions, and that affects innovation and creativity in small businesses, and it affects our privacy. So we've got to, and also in terms of lifting all boats, more individuals should be involved in big tech and not just these major corporations. We will be looking at reproductive rights. We will be looking at land banks and making sure that there is critical affordable housing, immigration policies. We're working with the federal government to ensure that our immigration policy, again, is fair and applies to all individuals. So our list is long, but I've got a wonderful, wonderful team. I'm really excited. I'm really excited that I can continue to focus, but it has my full attention, again, representing the interest of the residents of the great state of New York and getting around to all 62 counties in the state of New York. I look forward to that as well.
Well,
Working
thank
with
you so
Chuck
much.
Schumer, our majority leader. Yay. I'm excited about that because I look forward to working with him as we address child poverty in Rochester and upstate New York.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Attorney General. It's been such a pleasure to hear about you and to feel, I think that might be hope I'm feeling, which is something I haven't felt as much recently as I would like to have. So we're really looking forward to what you're going to be able to accomplish. Certainly, in particular, you've accomplished so much in some of the most challenging conditions. I can only imagine what you're going to be able to accomplish after tomorrow. And I want to just say to the audience, if you're interested and want to watch more, keep your eye on Justice Talks. This conversation will be posted to our website soon, and you can watch it there. Thank you again, and please go back and keep doing what you've been doing. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, and let's continue to keep justice alive. Thank you. Thank you, ladies.